Hey there, internets. So, time for the Saturday Night Rant. And some stuff's good stuff. It actually could almost be a liberals or government in your daily life. But just to cover a couple of things. Yes, the Democrats Wednesday plan to mark up a assault weapons ban that I'm going to have to read through because they want to ban apparently pistols over 50 ounces, which yes, that might cover some AR pistols, but it covers a Desert Eagle. And if you're carrying a Desert Eagle, or you own one, it's probably a redneck status symbol, honestly, because most of us ain't carrying that unless it's like one of the smallest ones. We wouldn't even consider it, and there's so many other things we might carry instead. But, they, of course, know nothing about guns. But in the news this week was the pro-abortion people are making this big hoopla about a 10-year-old who had to go supposedly from Ohio to Indiana to get an abortion because she was a victim of sexual assault. Realistically, a 10-year-old's body isn't going to be able to carry a child, even if you don't think rape should be a reason for an abortion. And I have to say I have to be able to live with that reason. I know some people may not be real happy with it, but that's something I personally am kind of torn on some of those things. It's one of those where I don't like it, but I have to say the woman didn't consent, or in this case, a child didn't consent. And so, under Ohio law, after 6 weeks, no abortions whatsoever, except for the mother's life being endangered. In the case of a 10-year-old, the mother's life would likely be endangered, regardless of whether she could otherwise get pregnant, which is pretty rare by itself at that age. But on top of that, only 5%, about 5% of rape victims do become pregnant. And when you include all the cases of abortions for reasons of rape, it's a very tiny percentage of the abortion cases. But regardless, it's the same thing, tiny percentage of those abortions that occur because of the mother's life or even the mother's health. And so she could have stayed in Ohio under those circumstances. Ohio's AG has said under those circumstances it could have been done. The Indiana AG is looking into the doctor, the abortionist, who did the abortion, and as to whether she failed to report her patient having been an abuse victim. Now, I, as a martial arts instructor, am a mandatory reporter. And my wife, when she was a substitute teacher, mandatory reporter. Even if you just suspect a child is being abused in any way, you're required to report it. Okay? That's no ifs, ands, or buts. If I had a student show up with bruises, and I have to start saying how those bruises occur, and if especially bruises in weird spots, where maybe I see them somewhere they shouldn't be outside their clothing, I should at least be asking. And that's one of those situations where I have to inform the state. And so that's what the Indiana AG is looking into. But I want to talk more about the perpetrator here for a minute, or the alleged perpetrator. The alleged perpetrator is a illegal immigrant from Guatemala. Now, I don't care what skin color he is. I don't care what country he comes from. I want to know why we're putting up with an illegal immigrant staying here for 7 years. Has a job. Why isn't his employer being investigated by Border Patrol or immigration for employing him? Did they do their due diligence to try and make sure they weren't employing an illegal immigrant. And then we have these states and Franklin County where he has been arrested. And he's 27. Franklin County in Ohio is a sanctuary county. Immigration has a detainer on him now. So I don't understand why people think that there's some reason that law enforcement shouldn't say, hey, we just picked up this guy. Turns out to be an illegal immigrant. Do you guys want to come get him? Or even to refuse when INS says, hey, heard you have this guy. We're going to come get him. Please hold him for us. I mean, I can understand saying, hey, we're not going to hold him longer than this many days or this many hours if you're wanting him, and expect INS to show up. I think it's still called INS. But to pick him up and get him out of here. But there's people that seem to think that criminal behavior should just be tolerated that way. And I don't get it. He shouldn't be allowed to remain. When you come here, you're expected to obey laws. I've sat there watching to Catch a Smuggler on, I think it's Travel Channel, or Smithsonian, with my wife, and they stop a gal coming from Australia, and they're looking through her phone, and there's pictures of her smoking pot. Now, for certain states, that's legal, but under federal law, it's not. They turned her around, sent her back. Didn't matter whether she was coming to marry her boyfriend. There was evidence she wasn't going to follow our laws. And of course, they're worried about federal law. They're not worried of, are you going to violate Lyndon's law about not mowing your grass? They don't really care about that, I suspect. They can't follow every little local law, but they do have to go by federal laws. Even though she was going to Colorado, which was a state where pot was legal. So this is exactly what we're talking about for a lot of us on the right. We're seeing a couple things here is possibly an abortion provider not making a report. Now, I have seen a report that she did report. I haven't found one that says she may have reported it as the wrong age, and that could be a typo, honestly. But the fact is a lot of times Planned Parenthood hasn't liked to report, oh, a 14-year-old's pregnant. Well, we know something illegal happened there, especially if the man was older. They're not interested in reporting that. They should be wanting to report it. And it should be bothering everybody. I don't care whether you're for or against abortion being generally legal. No one should want a clear sign of abuse or sexual assault, either one, to go unreported. Because for all those while the people on the right say we want to see evidence, and the child that was aborted is being tested for DNA to confirm that this guy's the father. Apparently he has confessed to raping this girl twice, at least. We should, you get people on the right, once guilty, they start talking about wanting punishments that cannot be taken back. Sometimes suggesting, death penalties for that kind of crime. I've heard, or cutting stuff off for that kind of crime. You won't find a bunch of people that are going to come harder on that. So you got to wonder on somebody who's to do that. Why do you want to keep illegal immigrants here, especially when they won't follow the law? I could understand a law saying, police won't worry about immigration status of a crime victim. If the victim had been an illegal immigrant, I wouldn't want her fearing to report. But when you're talking about the alleged perpetrator, there shouldn't be a problem here. Come on, Democrats. Why don't you want somebody like this picked up and gotten out of here? Because most immigrants are hardworking. Most want to be here. Unfortunately, we have a broken system. People are willing to risk their lives to come here. But I'm not going to spit on the people that wait in line to let a bunch of people just skip the line with the amnesty. I'm not going to do that, and I will not do that, because that's effectively what you're doing. I used to work with a Filipina gal, and I asked her, how do you feel about this idea of amnesty? And she'd come as a mail order bride, and she said she found it insulting. Because to her, she had to go through a pain-in-the-ass process just to get into this country. It didn't help that she had an abusive husband who somebody should have taken fishing and had an accident. But he got cancer, so she's free of him. He got terminal cancer. I think the only time I ever thought that everybody did dance when somebody caught that disease. But she had to go through pain-in-the-ass system. I was going, the gym I go to, they had a gal that was working the front desk at the time. She was from Argentina. And she had come here because her mom married an American. They had to go through interviews and background checks and all this pain in the butt stuff to come here. And remember, we're talking Argentina, and she was trying to decide whether to make that very personal decision of whether to become an American citizen or not. Right or wrong doesn't really matter. She found it very insulting that she had to go through that process only to have some people want to let anybody stay. And then to want to let people who are clearly of the criminal element that you have in any society, want to let them stay? Why? We have a rising crime problem. Send them back where they came from if they're part of that criminal element. Period. If you can't behave, we don't want you here. We put people in prison for a reason when they commit crimes, to get them away from the rest of society. And some of them that can't chronically can't behave. We have a 3 strikes, you're outlaw. How about a 1 strike when you're an illegal immigrant? You're gone. So that's the situation. Is we got going on in Ohio. It isn't as the media is portraying as though this girl had to be taken across state lines. Now, it may have been just a less hoops to jump through, and that would be one thing. And there should be a process in certain cases of, hey, it's presumed that the girl can't survive. Maybe they need to adjust the law and say it's presumed that it's a mother's life if the girl is under 13. That could be easily written in, because that part is happening earlier. But somebody's body is not developed enough to be carrying a child, even if that part has started, as far as the ability to get pregnant. So they need to, be a little less of I think there's a lot of political motivation to want to use that story. So, but moving on to where we can talk more government or Democrats in your daily life. For those that don't know, PSE, Puget Sound Energy, is proposing a almost 13% increase. It's like 12.9% starting in January 1, 2023. For those of you that, I couldn't find a link to it, but I found a friend of mine post on Facebook about PSE wanting this increase, and there's a virtual meeting on September 22nd where you can make your comments known about this increase. But here's the thing. They're saying it's because of Washington's green energy requirements. So I found from the Energy Information Agency, which is a U.S. federal government page, Washington already gets 66% of its energy. According to the Energy Information Agency, Washington is a net exporter of electricity right now. We send electricity over the course of the year net. We're sending it to Canada. We're sending it to Idaho, California, Oregon, Baja California, in terms of total energy. Coal accounts for 5%. I think natural gas is about 9%. We get a small amount. We have one nuclear power plant in this state. We do have a significant chunk from wind. A very tiny portion comes from solar, and you don't gotta be a genius to figure out why we don't get much solar power from Washington State. And if I recall, when they passed this, you have to get 15% from renewables in 2006 as an initiative, I-937, they weren't counting hydroelectric as a renewable, despite the fact that it should be counted. Because if we did that, it'd be like, done, already got it. Everything you're talking about is meaningless, but they don't count hydroelectric. 66% of our energy comes from hydroelectric in this state. Well, they're trying to go completely carbon neutral, and even beyond that, I'm not sure what entirely that means, by 2045. 2030, they want to be carbon neutral. 2045, they want to be beyond carbon neutral. Well, this is having greater impacts because now they're saying they have to lay out all this this money to be able to get to that. And that's their justification for their 12.9% increase. And you think about how we got a inflation rate that this week we found out is 9.1% if you use the current standard for CPI. If you use the standard of how they measured in 1980, we're in double-digit inflation. And they want to do a double-digit increase on power rates. And they've got aspects for the Baker River Dam and some different things. But ultimately, they're saying it's only going to be a $12 increase in the bill. I figured up at 12. I don't know how they arrive at that unless they're figuring people aren't using very much electricity for their refrigerators and whatnot. Now, granted, my house is entirely electric. I have no natural gas, no propane, no wood heat. LEDs now are all in all the rooms, except for two light bulbs that don't get turned on that much. I even got an LED for a light bulb in a closet that doesn't get turned on much. So it's LEDs or CFL. There's an old CFL in my laundry room. I'm just going to wait till it burns out to replace it. But that's what I have. I went and pulled my 2021 bill because of the flood. My 2022 bill is not accurate to what I would use for my what would be basically cover that January, February usage. $460. So 12.9% of $460 is over $50 for that 1-2 month period. That's a lot more than a $12 increase, dude. And I got a 650 square foot house. They're trying to kill natural gas for heat and cooking in a lot of the new houses. What's that going to do to an electric rate? Think about this a minute. If I have a 650 square foot house and it costs me in the winter $460 for my house, and in the summer I get like a bill of like $150-ish. You do a 12% increase, it's going to be a lot over the course of a year. I'm going to have a lot more than a $12 a month increase, and they're wanting to increase the rate of natural gas. So I'm not sure how they're coming up with a $12 increase for most residential customers, and they're also proposing an increase on the cost of natural gas. Something don't add up there, and I think they're undermining it because they like to lie about that stuff. And this same thing applies to Governor Jay Inslee. A couple of these this also was generated by a couple of friends posting about the new cap and trade thing that our state's voters voted no twice. What did the Democrats do? They voted it in anyway. A cap and trade proposal for Governor, I'm all about the environment, Dimsley. They pushed this thing through. They said, it'll only be, it'd be pennies. They're talking 46 to 52 cents, depending on whether you got gas or diesel, for next year, passed on to consumers. And he's trying to blame the oil companies and the refining companies. No, That doesn't work, guys. Seriously. Every time you tax something like that, it just gets passed on to the consumers. It's not going to impact the corporation. They're just going to pass it on. And so it turns out that their whole cap and trade scheme is going to cost consumers a whole lot more. So when you see your gas tank receipt, you can figure 46 cents a gallon heading to the state of Washington. When you see all these requirements that they've imposed, you can thank the people, largely in Olympia, but that initiative, it was Seattle. So this is government in your daily life. This is liberal Democrat policy in your daily life. Your gas bill, your natural gas bill, your electric bill, what goes into your gas tank. These are trying to push and push and push this stuff to where it's hurting the poor people. I'm on the edge, and I'm above the median income as an individual, but as a household, because Melissa's not working, we're talking, we're on that edge of what's 80% where maybe you get some deal on your electric. I highly doubt it when it's all said and done. So, and because of other things, probably wouldn't qualify. I can afford to live in a 650 square foot house when I had a mortgage. If I'm living in something that small, I'm not one of those rich people. Okay? So you got, this is seriously look at your bill, and you know that when your electric bill goes up in 2023, and you get that sticker shock, because you gotta have, for only $12 a month, you gotta be paying. You'd have to be paying like $100 for 2 months, or for a month, to a $200 bill for your entire electric bill. For that to be a realistic estimate. If you're paying $200 a month in January, that's real. That becomes realistic. It's not realistic most of the rest over the course of a year. $12 a month increase. So my biggest bill was $460 in 2021, and I think it went a little higher. And then they got smaller things, but you have massive increases coming because of all this green energy policy of the Democrats. That is them in their daily life. That is in your daily life. Democrats in your daily life are running your energy bills up for gasoline, electricity, natural gas. So you can blame them, and you really need to think about how you vote, because some of these people are not really representing you. Deborah Lekinoff, 40th District, part of Skagit County and Whatcom County, and out in the San Juan Islands, she's talking about, oh, well, you got to think about how this applies to people of color. People of color are the people having to pay these high electric bills because they're in the city and they're maybe not making as much money. Maybe she should go represent the people that from the 40th District and how it's going to impact them. That's who you're supposed to represent, Deborah Lekinoff. So, what about those people? What about the people in Bow, or on the San Juan Islands, or in Anacortes? We're going to pay for your virtue signaling. How about you represent them? Or yes, you got Bellingham. But what about Ferndale? That's part of your district. Alger, that's part of your district. Chunks of Mount Vernon, Burlington, that's part of your district. What about them when you pass these laws? Or do you just want to, are you thinking they're just a bunch of rich people like yourself? Something to consider there, Representative Lekinoff. Who are you representing? Are you representing the people of your district? Or are you representing people in Seattle Because that's who it sounds like to me that you're representing. So, remember that? Make sure you smash the like button, share this with your friends, and subscribe if you haven't. You guys all have a nice night.